Hey bookworms, welcome back to another classic related video. We are approaching February 7th, the birthday of the great Charles Dickens. And for this occasion, I decided to help all of you guys that want to start reading classics but don't know where to start because this can be very intimidating. So on this video, I'll list 10 of my favorite beginner-friendly classics, so let's get to it. So obviously this is only my opinion and every person finds different things easy, so take that into consideration. I try to pick books from different genres, from thrillers to comedies and adventures, and I hope you appreciate my choices. And if talking about classics sound like something you like, first off, give this video a like, but also check out my other videos because I don't always talk about classic novels, but I do try to make them a little more accessible, and I have an entire playlist dedicated to classic reviews. But let's start with two relatively short books from the same author that I think no one can call too heavy. The first is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Scottish author Robert Louis Stevenson from 1886. This short novella follows the lawyer Mr. Utterson, who is worried about his friend Dr. Jekyll after the latter changed his will to benefit a mysterious Mr. Hyde in case of Jekyll's death or disappearance. After realizing Mr. Hyde is a horrible human being, Utterson worries that Hyde might be blackmailing poor Mr. Jekyll. And you know the rest. This is a very famous story with a very famous twist, but the novella is written as a mystery. It's short and to the point, manages to say many things about human nature and the good and bad in all of us without philosophizing about it too much. We are staying with Stevenson for the next one, and if horror is less your thing and you're more into adventures, then I recommend Treasure Island from 1883. I read this one at school with English being my second language, just to show you its difficulty level. This is another famous story about Jim Hawkins, a kid who goes on a treasure hunting journey with the crew of the ship Hispaniola, which ends up with one of the crew leading a mutiny. This was a fun book that I believe was meant for the younger readers originally, but it's totally for adults with a young heart or for youngsters who wants to read classics. I don't remember too much of the book. The last time I read it was years ago, but I remember really enjoying its fast pace and thrills. Now let's jump to the other side of the pond. American classic literature is something that I should really read more of, but one author I can definitely recommend is Mark Twain, and the next book on this list is The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn from 1884. Now, this one isn't very short, but I bet you wouldn't even notice its length. A companion book to Twain's Tom Sawyer, this one takes place in Mississippi and follows Huck Finn, a mischievous, adventurous kid who hates the fact that his guardians are trying to civilize him, and he decides to run away. So Huck and a runaway slave, Jim, find a raft and decide to sail to where both of them can be free. This book was a lot of fun, and my favorite parts were the conversations between Jim and Huck, where one explains things to the other with a very bad understanding of the subject matter, which results in a very entertaining misinformation. These bits really show Twain's humor, which is, in my opinion, the selling point of this author. Speaking of people sailing and humor, the next book is a childhood favorite, Three Men on a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome from 1889. This is a hilarious book about three friends and a dog who decide to take a boat trip down the river Thames. What follows is a hysterical comedy of errors that will leave you in stitches. Obviously, a funny and enjoyable book will be considered an easy read, but it's also a matter of sense of humor. But you don't have to be British to enjoy this book's humor. Just don't drink anything while reading it. Next, we have another mystery, this time a classic detective book. Who else but the great Sherlock Holmes? Now, most of Holmes' stories are short stories, which can be perfect for beginners, but I am not a fan of short stories, so instead I'll recommend probably the most famous Holmes novel, The Hounds of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle from 1902. In this one, the famous detective is tasked in solving what seems to be a supernatural mystery. The Baskerville family seems to be cursed by an ancestor who allegedly made a pact with the devil. Since then, and many young, healthy members of the family died mysteriously, supposedly by a demonic hound that roams their land. Holmes does not believe in such supernatural elements and decides to find the real reason for the latest mysterious death. I said in the past that I'm more of a Christie fan than Doyle, and that generally I don't like the Sherlock Holmes stories, but I did like this one, and I'm planning on doing a separate review on it. Who said classics can't be suspenseful or fun? The next one is a bit different. It's non-fiction, and I wouldn't automatically put it in this classic category. However, it is on many classic literature lists, and generally speaking, I think people should read it, especially young ones, especially considering what's going on in this world. And this is The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, which was published in 1947. Anne Frank was a Dutch Jewish girl who received a diary for her 13th birthday, and later the same year, her entire family went into hiding when the Nazis invaded her homeland. Anne continued to write in her diary, sharing her experience of her life in hiding. Not only does this diary give us a very intimate glimpse into what was it like to be a hated little girl who had to hide or else be killed, it is also very interesting. I remember reading it when I was 13, and I was just so struck by how talented this young girl was, who was just writing a diary without meaning for it to be published. Had she survived, I bet she would have been a best-selling author. However, unfortunately, the entire family was captured in 1944, and Anne died a year later in a concentration camp. Now let's move on to something a little less intense, like haunted houses. Next, I want to recommend one of my favorite horror novels ever, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson from 1959, making it the most modern book on this list. This novel is about a scientist who wants to prove the existence of the supernatural by inviting some people who possibly had paranormal experiences to stay in the titular Hill House that is rumored to be haunted. And then things start go bump in a nut. And let me tell you guys, books usually don't actually scare me, but this one did. It's eerie, suspenseful, dark, but also so well written and has a very fast pace. So if you want a more psychological horror novel that scares you without blood, guts, and gore, this one is a total win. Next, we have a great adventure in The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas from 1844. This novel tells the story of Edmond Dantes, who was betrayed by his friend and wrongfully imprisoned. It's his tale of escape, redemption, and revenge on those who ruined his life. Now bear with me, because this one is not a short, easy, fast-paced read, but it's still on this list because it was so interesting. You just completely immerse yourself in it. Disclaimer, I read this book about 1,000,000 years ago. I don't remember the little details, but I do remember managing to finish it gladly despite its length. But that was before the times of smartphones, when my attention span was longer, so... But in the past, the book was youngsters friendly, so you have no excuse. This is just a fascinating life story, a pure adventure tale of love, betrayal, revenge. I should really read this one again. Next, we have another terrific British comedy, Righto, Jeeves by P.G. Wodehouse from 1934. Again, a good comedy can be read in one day, and I am a sucker for good, cynical British humor. This book is a part of a series called Jeeves and Wooster, which tell the endeavors of high-class clueless Bertie Wooster and his butler Jeeves, who is the actual mastermind of everything Bertie thinks he's doing himself. I haven't read all books on the series, but they have a hilarious comedy of error structures, all surrounding fancy posh people in England of the 1930s that think that they are a lot smarter than they really are. And in this one we have a kerfuffle in a countryside estate when Wooster decides to help his old friend by playing matchmaker. If you want a perfect example of a nutty British sense of humor with a hint of Shakespeare's The Twelfth Night, I totally recommend this one. And if you're a fan of Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie, they actually had a TV series in the 90s where they played Jeeves and Wooster, respectively. And lastly, I couldn't do this list without having at least one novel by Charles Dickens. But I can't say his books are really easy reads, so I decided to go with one of the shorter ones of his I know, one that, unlike his stories of hardship and injustice, is just so sweet and wholesome and gives you a warm feeling. This is A Christmas Carol from 1843. I bet you already know the plot. It's about grumpy miser Ebenezer Scrooge, a bitter, sour man who hates the Christmas spirit of friendship and philanthropy. But on Christmas Eve, he is given a warning. He will be visited by 3 ghosts: the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas yet to come. And by the end of those visits, he has to change his evil ways, or he will be cursed to be tortured in hell for all eternity. Guys, there is a reason why this is the ultimate Christmas story. It's so heartwarming, delightful, sweet story that felt like a bedtime story. And those were my 10 beginner-friendly classic novels. Did you read any of them? Any other recommendations for easy classics? Let me know in the comments section. So guys, thank you for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel for more bookish videos. And until next time, goodbye.